Hi everyone, Nick here, and today we're having a look back at another F1 2020 league race. This time we're in Japan at the Suzuka International Racing Course, which is one of my favourite tracks. Not just on the F1 calendar, but just in general. Really big fan of this track on every game it's ever on. It never used to be one of my favourites, but I don't know, ever since I think it just clicked for me, possibly coincidentally with me getting a wheel as opposed to a pad, I've just really rated it. Just it's always been my favourite, and I was reasonably happy with how things were going to go into this race. I had a bit of practice, which I hadn't had for some other races before, and I didn't necessarily think I was going to do amazingly well. I just felt on the front foot, and for me, half of the battle is in my own head. It's about confidence. If I go in with a nice, positive, forward-thinking frame of mind, then often I find I kind of get rewarded by actually driving well. And if I go in on the back foot, then I'm kind of just a bit tentative and that kind of thing, and it doesn't get rewarded. So fingers crossed we could have a decent race at one of our favourite tracks. Anyway, into qualifying, and you'll see I'm in the correct car now. I'm driving for Alfa Romeo for the first time in this particular race. Wasn't a huge fan of the car in practice, but it felt okay. The more that I drove it, the more that I kind of got the hang of it and felt it was okay. It wasn't really any better than the Haas, but it was kind of much of a muchness. In qualifying, my first lap was, again, okay, kind of much of a muchness, 129.199. It's fine, I guess. Second lap wasn't good. I made quite a few mistakes, and even though I was at this point still in with a chance of maybe getting a better lap, we just made a complete mess of a chicane there, and just aborted that and went straight into the pits. So going into the final run, at this point we were at P11, but we were definitely going to be losing places if we didn't improve sharpish. So blasting down the pit straight with DRS, only DRS zone, wide open, flying through turns 1 and 2 and into VS's. And this is my favourite part of the track. This is great. It's just a challenge to try and keep the speed as high as possible, but you don't want to be too greedy in these. You don't want to try and go, you can go faster through one of them, but if you mess one of them up, it costs you, and then you want to get out onto Dunlop and get on the throttle as quickly as possible and then carry as much speed up the hill. Degner 1, lob it in 7th gear. Degner 2, get it slowed down to 3rd. Don't use too much of the curb on the outside because it's a bit slippery. And with a hairpin, you don't really need to get right on the apex, but you just want to try and carry the speed through, get the car straight, and then get it up the hill. And at this point, we're over 3/10 up, so that's quite good. But now we're going to come up to Spoon, which is my nemesis on this track. I just don't really ever seem to take it the same way every single lap. And you see there we've lost about a 10th there, and there was definitely time to be made up there rather than thrown away like that. So we're going into the 3rd sector. We're on a personal best, but we need it to be a good lap. So the final chicane, we're going to go through here. We make up some time there, but we're a little bit late on the brakes, and it compromises us through the second part, and we're a little bit tentative on getting on the throttle. So we go right hand side. We only improve by 2/10, and that's only good enough to put us into 10th place on the grid. And that would actually be 9th on the grid because Maxi ahead of us in 8th place had a 5-place grid penalty. But again, it was one of those ones where I wasn't massively happy, and if I'd done a better lap, which I knew I was capable of, I could have gained a couple more places on the grid. So slightly frustrating, but again, could have been a lot worse. Anyway, into the race, starting on the soft tyres in 9th, and we want to get a nice getaway. We want to make sure we don't get jumped by the medium runners behind us because that could ruin our race. And we're going to try and be cautious but a little bit bold into the first couple of corners. We give Mav plenty of room on the inside. You can see he's front wing just poking around there. And we've got the left hand here, and he's going to have a right hand here. So we're kind of neck and neck, and at this point he concedes the position and we've got through. So that's some nice driving from Mav and I there. And at this point we're trying to see what can we do with the cars in front. We've got Tony in the Williams, so on one hand Williams should be rubbish, other hand Tony reasonably good at the game. So we're going to try and see how we go here. Always a bit of congestion on the first lap at the hairpin, and if that was the AI, I think I literally just said the same thing in the pie chat. If that was the AI, I would have sent that up the inside and given Tony a bit of a bump wide and taken the place. But we're much more polite to our fellow league racers than we are to the AI. One thing we were really concerned about, though, was the straight line speed of the Alfa Romeo. It didn't feel good. I know the Ferrari engine doesn't feel good anyway, but compared to the Haas, I wasn't feeling it in this car at all. So we're using a little bit of fuel. I mean, we started the race with 3 laps worth of fuel, so we could use rich fuel down the straights if we needed to. But we managed to survive ahead of a Racing Point with its lovely Mercedes engine behind us, and things kind of stayed the same until lap 3. And at that point we started to gain places, but not through our good driving. It was through other people's misfortune or mistakes. So you can see Beckford's gone off the track to the left hand side there, and that's given us a place, and we're up to 7th now. It's a very tricky track, this, and there's lots of curbs where if you clip them a bit too much, they're not forgiving. And as we come through here to go under the bridge, you can see Semi has also come a cropper, possibly ran a little bit wide on that curb, spun, gone onto the inside, and that's us up into 6th place. In terms of the cars around us, it was kind of much of a muchness, really. You can see top left hand corner, Stefano's about a second ahead of Tony, who's about a second ahead of me, who's about a second ahead of Mav, who's about a second ahead of Beckford. Classic DRS, or maybe not quite DRS, but kind of DRS-y kind of train. And as much as I do like Suzuka, one of the kind of issues it has is it's very narrow and there's very few places to overtake. So when Port went off there in the S's, that was a gift that we weren't going to say no to, and that was us up into 5th place. But as the first stint went on, I felt like I wasn't wearing my tyres as much as other people. There was a bit of people complaining in the pie chat, so that's always a dead giveaway, but also the fact I was getting close to the cars in front but not necessarily losing too much time behind. And case in point, you can see when we come around this corner, Wiggins has spun in his McLaren, and we're going to use all our goodies to make sure we get past him down the run to Spoon. And at this point I was thinking, let's be aggressive. Let's be aggressive with the strategy. Normally I'd be pitting at about lap 10, and I'm going on to mediums. I'm going for a soft medium strategy. So I was thinking at this point, if the cars in front don't pit, I'm going to pit. I'm going to undercut them, and I'm going to try something a bit bold. However, Semi decided he was going to retire, and that was going to bring out the safety car, which meant that literally everyone, apart from the very unfortunate Coulthard, who was in the lead and had just gone past the pit entrance, and Blarg, who was on hard tyres I think from the start, came into the pits, and that basically said strategy, no, it's gone. So we're going to put our medium tyres on, going to the end, getting released, slightly held, and that's let Wiggins get ahead of us. So that one place we gained when he span out of the hairpin, that is gone. Interestingly though, he's gone on to the hard tyres, and so has Beckford behind me. And I was a little bit surprised that anyone was going to go with hard tyres. I think the game wants you to do that, but mediums get you to the end here, no problem. So, end of lap 12, and it's the safety car. It's coming in, and we're doing a restart. So, you know the drill by now. I say it every time. Be careful on the safety car restart. We're going to have slightly cold tyres. We've got first flying lap on mediums, and we've got a bit of fuel in our car as well, so we're a bit heavy. So we're going to be nice and careful through turns 1 and 2. So Wiggins went a little bit wide, possibly needs to be a bit more careful, especially because he's on hard, so they're going to be a little bit tricky to warm up. And yeah, it's just try and make sure that in the first few corners in these S's, where it's very easy to make a mistake at the best of times, survive, get through them, get some heat into the tyres, and then we can try and move forward. And the obvious first target is to try and get past Wiggins, not because he's rubbish or anything, but because he's on hard tyres, and he's just naturally going to be a little bit slower than he otherwise would be if he was on the mediums, and he's got the potential to maybe hold us up. However, before he can hold us up, you may have seen at the bottom of the screen that Hag's retired, and it's the virtual safety car, so we've only had barely even a sector and a half before the VSC came out after the safety car. And this was going to end up being a bit of a theme, a bit of a disjointed second half to a race, unfortunately, but we were making sure to stay under the delta. At this point we were basically saying, please don't turn the virtual safety car off when we get to the chicane, because it's really difficult when you get to slow bits and the delta goes up and down. So of course that's exactly what happened as we come through the final chicane, and that is where the virtual safety car stopped and we returned to racing speed. Again, we lost a little bit of time and we were a little bit wary of Beckford. He's less than 4 tenths behind now in his Alfa Tauri, but we used a bit of rich fuel and made sure that we stayed ahead of Beckford behind and kept on the tail of Wiggins ahead, because we didn't want to get too disconnected from the cars ahead of him. So, start of lap 15, DRS has been enabled, but we've lost time to Wiggins, but that wasn't going to matter because Sonny had crashed, and predictably that brought out the full safety car. So that was the second full safety car, third safety car of any kind, and that was just going to reset things again. No need for any pit stops at this point, so we got 10 laps to go after this one finishes, and it's restart number 2. So again, coming out of the final chicane, you can see Wiggins has lit the rear tyres up and got a bit of a spin on. Very, very easy to do when you've got hard tyres on if they lose a bit of temperature, but our usual tactic of being nice and careful on the restarts pays some dividends, and we are up into 3rd place. So at the moment, we're on for a podium, and you can see that Tony in front of us has got 3 seconds of penalties. So the tactic here was to try and stay in touch with them, but for whatever reason I just felt really slow in this phase of the race, and although I was at this point still looking ahead, you can see Tony's now 2 seconds ahead, and continue to the end of the race he's probably going to get 3 seconds clear. And I was probably guilty of looking too far ahead, because at this point you can see Beckford is really close, you can see the red arrows, and he goes up the inside and he gets the job done, and it's fine. And I was really annoyed at that point by that move, and I'm not entirely sure why, because it wasn't like it was a stupid send or anything. I think it was just that I'd let it happen. I hadn't really defended it. I think I maybe felt a little bit frustrated by, it's the car being a bit slow in a straight line, and realistically Beckford was a long way back, but he got the job done, and we weren't able to keep with him, and Tony has indeed got a over 3 second lead on us. So that podium really wasn't looking likely. However, there was another safety car to come on lap 24 as Maxi unfortunately crashed out, and this was going to help us because it was going to mean that with only 2 laps to go we were going to be much closer to Tony, who was in second with that 3 second penalty. I should point out at this point I did have 2 warnings, so although I had to go and try and stay in touch, I also had to make sure I kept it within the track limits, because it would be very frustrating to lose out on a position due to a penalty at this point. And at this point in the lap I wasn't really that confident, because the cars in front did seem to just go away. As you can see, Tony's now up to 2.1 seconds ahead. Beckford's pulling away down the straight, not just because his car is fast, because he's right in Tony's slipstream. And this ended up really helping me, because Tony and Beckford started to have a bit of a battle. You can see they're almost exactly the same time. I don't know if they went side by side or anything like that through there, but the gap is now under 2 seconds, and if they kept on battling it out, that was really going to help. That was going to give me the chance to close on both of them, and well, I wasn't going to get Beckford, but I was possibly going to get Tony. on penalties. So less than 1.5 seconds, and the objective here is just stay with them. So we're going through the S's, trying to be nice and smooth, and then Beckford, really unfortunate, has the exact same spin he had at the start of the race, and his wheel has popped off. So he has retired. It's too late for a safety car, but most importantly for us anyway, is we've been able to stay with Tony. So you can see he's only about a second and a bit ahead of us. He's going to drop behind us once his 3-second time penalty gets applied, and we have achieved our joint best result of the season in an Alfa Romeo at our favourite track. That's not a bad result. I would have taken that all day long if you told me that before. Definitely if you told me that before when you said I was going to start 9th on the grid as well. So gained 7 places. Admittedly, I think all of those were from people spinning or getting penalties, but let's ignore that. It was a really positive result, I think, and hopefully we can keep that momentum. We've had a couple of poor results recently, so hopefully that'll give us a springboard forward for the final 7 races of the season. You can see we're in 5th place in the championship, 56 points off the top. It's too far realistically for us to get in the battle for the title, but hopefully we can just do as well as we can. Maybe top 3. Top 3 would be good. I'd be happy with that. So what have we learnt from the Japanese Grand Prix? Well, I think it's the 2 things really. It's almost like we're not learning it because it's something we already know. It's being careful, being cautious, not overly so, but keeping the car on the track, not getting the penalties, making sure you get the restarts done. It's kind of just doing, I don't want to say the basics because it's not that easy to do that, and you know they're good racers in this league who have spun out on this race, and it's not because they're bad, but if you can get all of those things together and just have a mistake-free race, you're going to be on to a winner. It's really underrated just not making mistakes, and I feel like in this race I did that and it paid dividends, so I'm happy with that. Anyway, that's the end of this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, then do the old liking, subscribing and commenting stuff. You know it makes sense, helps me out massively and is much appreciated. If you want to catch up with me on social media, then Twitter and Instagram are places to find me. Alfred Bulbasaur on there, details in the description below. And if you want to catch up between videos and between races, then Discord's a cool place to do that. Again, details in the description. And if you want to watch these league races as they happen every Wednesday and Sunday evening, then head over to Twitch. Details on the screen right now, and guess what, they're in the description below as well. Who'd have thought? But anyway, until next time and the next video, goodbye.